In this video, I'm going to talk about a skill that guitarists can develop, which is the ability to play things in different positions on the fretboard. Now, you don't need to know note names or scale patterns in order to develop this skill, but developing this skill will help you to learn notes and scale patterns and the overall fretboard much easier if that's what you choose to do. So the first question is, why would you want to play things in different positions? Next, I'm going to talk about some of the reasons of why you want to be able to play things in different positions on the fretboard. The first reason to learn to play things in different positions is that each different position offers different notes that are available when you play across the position. Across means this direction, up and down across the fretboard. For example, if you're interested in playing these two notes here, then you have easy access to these high notes that are in this position. So if you play in this lower position the same notes, you have access to notes that are lower that you can't access from the first position. And this is true across any different position that you can play on. The second reason is that one position offers different techniques that can be utilized versus other positions. So let's look at an example. If I wanted to play this D note followed by this F note, I could do it here from the 10th fret to the 13th fret, or I could do it here from the 10th fret to the 8th fret. If you notice here on the 10th fret, I use my first finger to hit the D and my fourth finger to hit this F. Also notice that the D and F are on the same string. And now here, if I go down to the 8th fret, I'm using my second finger to hit the F and my fourth finger to hit the D. And these notes are on different strings. So if we look at the first position, you can see that I have the ability to do hammer-ons, pull-offs, and slides between these two notes. But I don't have that ability in the second position. Now if I look at the second position, I have the ability to let one note ring and then strike the other note. So I have the ability to play the notes in unison or have some overlap in time. So each position offers sounds that are physically impossible in the other position. The third reason to learn how to change positions is that as we change positions, we're also slightly changing the characteristics of the string and the difference in the length of the string from where it's picked. And so we'd be changing the sound we can get out of different strings. So take a look at this D note here on the 12th fret versus here on the 7th fret versus here on the 3rd fret. The note here on the 12th fret is a thicker string that is wound and is closest to where I'm picking it. This note on the 7th fret is not as thick as the one on the 12th, but it's also a wound string and further away from where I'm picking it. And finally, this note here on the 3rd fret is the thinnest of these three, and it's not wound, and it's the farthest from where I'm picking it. All of these factors will contribute to the overall general sound that you're going to get from using a different position. So in general, as you move toward the higher strings and towards the lower frets, you'll get a twangier sound. And as you move towards the thicker strings and the higher frets, you'll get a more rounded sound. Certain positions offer different fingerings of similar phrases, which may make things easier to play. Let's take a look at an example. Take this phrase of 4 notes here on the 12th fret. If you notice, the shape is a rectangle. In other words, I'm playing notes on the same fret on these two strings, and 2 more notes 2 frets higher. So I can play this shape here on the 12th fret, on the 7th fret here, same exact shape. Now I can play the same notes here on the 2nd fret, but in order to do that, if you notice, I have to play this parallelogram shape. Now I'm playing these 2 notes, and then these 2 notes are shifted up a fret higher. So it's a parallelogram rather than a rectangle. This difference happens because of how standard tuning distributes the notes. There's a shift in the relationship between the 3rd and 2nd string versus the relationships between any other string and the string below it. The 2nd string is a half step lower than would be if we continued the pattern of the strings above it. And so I have to add half a step to the 2nd string to make up for this. This relationship between the 2nd and 3rd string is called a major third. The 2nd string is a major third of the 3rd string, as opposed to a 4th, which is the relationship between any other string and the string below it. So this shift is an important part of standard tuning because it makes certain chords easier to play that otherwise would be more difficult if that shift did not occur. For example, if I bar the second, third, or fourth strings of any fret, I'm playing a major triad. So here's a D major triad on the 7th fret. This triad in other places is more difficult to play. So if I play it down here, I have to play this shape on the 2nd fret. As you can see, it's not as easy as just barring. Having knowledge of this shift can allow you to take advantage of it to find easier ways to play things, because something played between the 2nd and 3rd strings will have a different shape than something played on the 3rd and 4th strings, for example. And that difference in shape may be better for what you're looking for. Last reason I can think of for learning how to play things in different positions is so that you don't become stuck playing things in the same place every time you pick up the guitar. It's human nature to become stuck playing in your comfort zone and not to venture out of that zone. What usually happens is you become bored with playing if you keep playing in the same position all the time. Your playing will always kind of sound the same, even if you're playing a different song. If you have the ability to move around the fretboard, it adds a lot of dimension and potentially excitement to your playing, even if you're trying to play the same thing simply because of the variety of sounds and shapes you can make. Just moving from one position to another opens the possibility of using a slide, for example, where you might not otherwise think of using one. And generally, it just looks cool if you're playing for an audience if you can move around the fretboard fluidly. So the real question is, how can you begin to learn to play things in different positions? Well, the first step is to increase your understanding of the relationships and the similarities that reoccur across the fretboard. And there are no markings that are going to show you these similarities, but you can discover things for yourself with some simple experiments. So if I take these notes that I pointed out earlier, this D here in the 12th, this D here in the 7th, this D here in the 3rd, you can see a line that emerges if we connect them together. So this is the axis of similarity, more or less, that emerges. In other words, if I look for notes along lines of this angle, I can take something I learned in one position and figure out how to play it in another position. So notes like this, I would look for along that angle to find out my starting point for being able to play those notes in a different position. The second thing you could do is use your ears as a tool when trying to move things between positions. So when you attempted to play something in two different places, were you playing the exact notes in each place, or was it just close? So what I would do is sound out each note individually, even if you're trying to move a chord into a different position. For example, if I play this triad here on the 7th fret, now when I want to play the same triad down here on the 2nd fret, if I play those notes individually, I can hear a difference. And now I know I need to make an adjustment to what I did here on the 2nd fret to make it match the first chord on the 7th fret. Another technique to help you learn how to play things in different positions is take a song that you're familiar with and try to figure out each chord or each part of a solo or whatever in a different position. If you practice this often, you'll encounter parts of songs that sound better or closer to the actual way it was played, even if you're just doing it by accident. Especially if you're used to playing in the open position all the time. You'll discover that many songs are actually performed by the artist in other positions than what you originally thought, or you'll accidentally discover an easier way to play something that was always difficult for you. And you may change the way you play those familiar songs going forward because of this. One important point to realize is that these lowest notes here on the 6th string and these highest notes here on the 1st string aren't duplicated anywhere else on the fretboard. So if you hear a note that's really high or really low, you'll only be able to play it in one position.